Okay. Thank you for all coming back in the room. We're going to get started again. Sorry to cut your lunch a little short, but we have a really packed afternoon of some great speakers and topics that I think are going to just continue this conversation we've been having about the future of our industry. Next up on our programming we did add this because we were so thrilled that have both Ola and Jess could come all the way from Toronto, Canada. This is the 51st state. Because every Canadian is the nicest person I've ever met. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the weather or something, but they're just all such nice people. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about AI and interior design, and I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves and then tell you what they're on the forefront of developing. So welcome, Jess and Ola.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Catherine. We've had some amazing conversations this morning about how our industry is moving, looking at where we're headed with having more sustainability in our designs and the future. And what we've done is really look into the technology piece. So how can we now use AI and what we know about this industry and really push it forward and propel? And so today we'll be talking about circular intelligence, using AI in order to push forward the path of sustainability in interior design. So this is just an overview of our agenda. We'll be talking about the journey to net zero, life cycle of products, which we've touched on this morning, growing demands, again, the AI piece and our opportunity, as well as introducing our organization, reFern. So a little bit about us. My name is Jessica. I am an environmental engineer by trade, but I've been working in the sustainable building science field for the past couple of years. And I had co-founded reFern with my good friend Ola, who has a background in chemical engineering, but has worked on supply chain, manufacturing, product compliance, and is also leading our technology piece of reFern. So just to start off, I think we've all heard net zero, reaching net zero. And so 140 countries across the globe have pledged to hit net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And of that, we know that a huge portion comes from the buildings industry. About 40% of global emissions come from buildings. So looking at the building breakdown, actually, Verda had mentioned this earlier on, the study from LM&N Architects, when we look at the emissions from interiors, renovations, as well as improvements, actually almost equate and if not surpass the emissions associated with the exterior of a building. And again, this is just because of the frequency of how often we do these renovations compared to, doing retrofits on the outside of a building. So how can we play a part? I think this shows that interior designers do have a big say in making an impact and accelerating to the path to net zero, but how exactly do we measure this? I think we know that material selection is huge, as well as cost, aesthetic, balance, and even country of origin of a lot of these materials that we're using. So when we look at this room, every material from the carpet to the chairs to the ceiling tiles, they have a unique path before it lands in your design. So we have an example. Let's say you were designing an office space and you're choosing between chair A and chair B. We've had mentions of life cycle assessments already this morning. So a life cycle includes material extraction, transportation, the manufacturing of the chair, the use, as well as end of life and disposal. These chairs definitely have different impacts. As we can see, chair A almost has double the impacts of chair B. And if we look at chair B, they also have a reuse and refurbish at the end of life, and that's where we bring in circularity. And so this really goes to show that there are materials out there that have a better environmental footprint overall, and really it comes down to selection. And again, every decision we make has a huge impact. So on top of just looking at the carbon emissions of a material, I think we also need to consider that there are additional environmental factors. And again, this was touched on before when we talk about healthy living spaces as well. And on top of that, you might recognize some of the standards to the right. A couple to mention are LEED, WELL. We also had Declare labels, Red List Free. Again, these are all standards that we are now looking at once we are selecting materials in a design. So to really note off, it's the good news is that the industry awareness is growing. And I think everybody in this room can agree with that. There are pressures not only from the industry as well as regulations in place that are moving. Although we are from Canada, we have a couple of different regulations, but notably to mention, we know the EPA has some grant programs. There's also LEED V5 that is coming out early in 2025 that has now mentioning interior LCAs, which is a huge push from LEED V4. As well as there are a lot of decarbonization paths that are now being in place and clients are looking and demanding to have.
All right, so I'm going to talk about how we keep up with this growing demand. We know that all of this is coming, and I think one big theme that we heard this morning was, how are we going to do all of this work? We like to think that this all starts with numbers, and I'm going to take a minute to dissect the nature of the challenge specifically. The work surrounding interior design over time has evolved, including in material selection. At some point, it was really easy to understand all of the vendors that might have been accessible to a designer, understand their business practices, and understand who to select. Over time, with the effects of globalization, we saw a huge uptick in optionality and even the insights that we gather from data. Since then, we've witnessed an explosion in vendor choices, and also in pressures to adopt sustainable practices, not only for our clients, but also for our environment. But the reality is there's no simple way to bridge these two things. And again, this was a theme that we talked about this morning. Where we have sustainability data, it can oftentimes be scattered or inaccessible. The process of material selection itself, data comparison, even procurement, oftentimes is highly iterative, super manual, and not necessarily what designers always sign up for. We love the design, not always the admin work. So the last piece of it that we wanted to mention was that the technology that does exist might not have the outputs that are present in the forms that we need and can oftentimes cause us to do more work than what was intended. So we need a solution to make all of this much more accessible. And in other words, we need a tool that changes that previously really scary cloud of circles into this. An easy way to track sustainable materials and meet the growing demands of the industry and understand how to transform the economy so that those red and orange vendors can then decide to become green. So how exactly do we do that? How do we keep up with the ever-growing list of requirements, mountains of data to sift through, again, without compromising the design? Well, that's what we're here to talk about, and the best part about being in the era of big data is that the tech has caught up. We are in the golden age of one of the biggest innovations, artificial intelligence. AI often gets a bad rep for being this ominous, potentially even man-replacing technology, but the reality is when we build it the right way, AI can take away those grunt work tasks that we as designers and as people did not necessarily sign up for. We can predict data with a certain level of accuracy to inform our decisions. We can use AI to process data from thousands of files without even, accessing them or looking through them one by one. And we can also use AI to classify visual information and instantaneously get us all the information that we would need to make these decisions. I'm going to dive into this a little bit deeper. So when we talk about predictive analysis, we can use that to develop models that sort through existing data, look at unorganized information, identify certain attributes or characteristics, and fill in those gaps. For example, let's say we had a specific chair and we knew that this chair emitted a certain amount of carbon dioxide during its raw material extraction, during transportation, and even during use. If we had additional information like the material composition, the project location, or even the manufacturer details, we might be able to extrapolate information and then provide estimates with a certain level of confidence on how much carbon dioxide was emitted during the other pieces that are missing here. We can then train those models to better understand where there might be discrepancies in those predictions and then bridge the gap and get them to become more accurate over time, leading to a full circle of data. Another really cool innovation with AI is language learning models. These models have made it significantly easier for us to process information that's written by people. Anything from environmental reports to environmental product declarations, safety data sheets, essentially any sort of document written by a human. We can look at human language, combine this with semantic wording and industry knowledge to summarize and even classify key information like material composition, emission data, or any other important data pieces, and again, make it much easier for designers to make informed decisions. What if we were also then able to use language learning models to ask Lucy, a chatbot, for example, to find items that match exactly our aesthetic, cost, emission targets, or say, I don't want PFAS in all of the materials I use in my project, and allow Lucy to provide you with a list of all of those materials. And then also train Lucy to learn your design preferences over time. Finally, and in my opinion, one of the most incredible innovations in AI is the image recognition capability. Imagine being at a design show or really anywhere where you have furniture and seeing a piece that you're a little bit interested in, wanting to understand more sustainability related information on it. What if you were able to pull your camera out and then access any publicly available information on that material or on that product and get all of the information you need to add that item to your database and support you in making those informed decisions? And the greatest part about AI is the more we use these models in whatever form they exist, any one of the three or beyond that, the more accurate they get. AI relies on user input to work, and used in the right way can return us to the work that we love while solving some of the biggest challenges that we face in this industry.
So we know the ability to use these models exist, but the industry tools just aren't available yet. By looking at all of this information, I think we've noticed that there is a gap in the design industry. Existing tools are not intuitive, they require a lot of assumptions, they're not customized for project location and designers, and there's no real actionable insights once the metrics have been calculated. So where do we go from here? Well, that's what we're doing. So we are reFern, an AI tool to make sustainable design decisions for interior spaces easy. We not only track emissions for each material and the finished product, we show you exactly how you can decarbonize your design project from stage 1 all the way to the end. When we build tools with the right technology, we expose the path to a truly sustainable future. When we have the ability to share data automatically, make design adjustments easy, leverage accurate data, you can then make informed decisions based on the outcomes provided. And you understand the results of those decisions as well, all leading to creating circularity in sustainable interior design. We are reFern. We are looking for pilot projects, and if you would like to be a part of this new push forward with AI and sustainable design, please speak with us. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I think we have a couple minutes for some questions.
I'll just stand up and be loud, okay? I can do that. So as you know, server farms and AI, large data processing, have a tremendous and increasing carbon footprint. Have you done any data capture to figure out whether the carbon that you are saving by specifying these cleaner products is offsetting the AI data processing?
That's a great question, and that's something that we think about all the time. You can't build sustainable tools without actually being sustainable and claim sustainability. We know that there are startups out there that are also looking at making the compute time of these LLMs and AI models much more efficient, such that eventually they will become more sustainable. But that is something that we plan to do as reFern and specifically understand the level of emissions associated with our computational capacities so that we can understand whether they're authentically, providing a much more sustainable option and causing an objective, reduction in carbon emissions as a whole.
I'm Jen, I'm an interior designer, and I've used AI for a lot of things already, so it's pretty exciting, and it's, good information in gets good information out. I believe that. However, in this world of facts are subject to interpretation, how is it that you are going to manage what information is out there? Greenwashing is very real. There's more and more products out there all the time. Like at the end of the day, an interior designer can only trust certain sources.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your data so that I can trust it, so that maybe I can expand my reach is ultimately what I think we're going for.
No, amazing question. Thank you. I think as I mentioned before, this is not just, we cannot complete this singularly. I think there's definitely needs to be input from other companies, organizations out there. As mentioned, there are a lot of standards in this room. We've heard Red List, Declare, Lead, Well. I think having those stamps of approval for those materials on our database are definitely a good check to make sure they are not greenwashing. We have the facts and the data backed up for these materials. But on top of that, on our end, before we add a material to our database, we are definitely looking into the materials, breaking them down, figuring out where they've collected this environmental data from. And that's where we come in, where we're training our models to really understand with a % confidence that, yes, this is a truly sustainable material before we present it out to our designers and individuals using our platform.
And might I add one thing to that? When we discuss life cycle assessments, there are verification entities out there that kind of verify whether the LCA data is actually accurate. So if we can parse that information in the available documentation using AI to also provide us with an understanding of where the data is coming from and who it's been verified by, then we can also, provide a little bit more of a stamp of authenticity to that.
Ingrid Baumann, architectural designer. I want to congratulate you for inventing a tool that is begging to exist. One of the big questions for me is, how do you integrate in your system something to actually combat SEO? As somebody who has to source a lot of materials, the big players are always there and they have the first spots. How do you bypass that? How do you go to the local guys? How do you have that embedded in your tool?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we've really noticed about existing tools is they don't really have location specification turned on almost, right? As you mentioned, there are amazing local artists, organizations, companies that make such great furniture from reuse, for example. They have really sustainable initiatives, but they're just not on the forefront. And that's what we really want to push. So by location, where you're located, we would definitely show you those alternatives and options. We mentioned the chatbot, Lucy. She'd be able to provide you local options for your designs and just create more granularity and transparency to what's available. And I think that availability and accessibility piece is super important that we're trying to put on the forefront of our platform.
And last thing to add to that as well is those local vendors that usually have those more sustainable practices, we want to also be there to educate them and help them understand that you can use our platform to further your reach, and also help them understand how they can really show the industry how they're actually the best player. So that's kind of also what we're doing at reFern. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. So just a background, we are an early stage company right now. So we are still working on our MVP, and Ola is actually the tech lead, so you can.
Yeah, sure. So our plan right now is to launch the first beta by October. That's in less than a month. And we are looking for interior designers who want to try our tool. So any interior designers that would like to be on our pilot list, you can reach out to us here. Please scan our barcode. It will take you to our information, and submit a request, and we'd love to have you on our list and potentially try out our tool and have you help us evolve our front-facing customer experience.
Thank you. Oh.
We have looked specifically at commercial only because we've identified that there are more sustainable pressures in that sector, but we're not agnostic, we are sector agnostic. So if there are residential projects that you'd like to trial out, we're more than happy to accept them.
Thank you so much. No.